Hey, welcome everyone to another episode of Beyond the Case. This is a podcast where global leaders from Harvard Business School's OPM community join in a personal capacity to share the life lessons, mental models, decisions that go behind building enduring companies. Today's guest is someone who's very special. He's been part of my living cohort for Unit 1 when I did OPM. And the guest's name is Richard Chen. He is the founder and CEO of Hawkbridge Capital, based out of Toronto in Canada. Richard, how are you? It's a pleasure to have you here.
Well, thanks for having me, Sohim.
Yeah. Richard, you're very, very analytical. Anyone who's been around you understands how you think maybe 5 to 10 steps ahead. And I'm just wondering, is this something that has been a part of your trait ever since you were a small child? Do you attribute this to the surroundings that you were raised in, or do you think this is something you developed as you grew up?
Well, thanks, Sohim. You're so kind of saying that. I would say it's rather a training from the work over the last almost 18 years. So I started Hawkbridge as an investment banking firm, and then the most recent few years, we turned it into an operator and investor, more like a building businesses. So every time we meet with the CEO, we have to ask the questions, understand their strategy, and trying to bring more ideas and bring more valuable contributions to their growth plan. So that training process has been, I would say, most important reasons. Of course, there's always reasons from personal interest, education, friends' influences, such as your influence.
You're also very well read. During the case discussions and also in classrooms, you would always back your thought process with certain bits from history, and you would reference, a book you might have read, which developed that insight for you on any particular topic, right? How do you find time to read, and how do you identify what type of content you want to read?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so thank you for the kind of words. Yeah, so when I was small, I see my father buying books, not in one book or two book. Every time he buy in boxes. Each box is like 20 books. So every time he bring a box home, and there's 20 more books adding to his bookshelf. So that's how I buy books. Every time I buy, I don't want to buy just one or two. I buy a bunch. It's an escape. It's an enjoyment. It's an entertainment for me to read books over the weekend. I use it as a stimulus to my thinking. I don't think just for work. I typically have a notebook beside me while I'm reading. It's actually, I read A, it gives me an idea for B. I read B, gave me an idea for Y. So I think a book is not only adding energy or experience, but also is give me this stimulus to think how I can do better in my own work.
Richard, today you've had a career which has spanned across engineering, finance, investing, cross-border transactions, and of course, entrepreneurship as well. If you go back to the beginnings, to your roots, were there any early experiences or any decisions that you can think of which shaped you to becoming the kind of entrepreneur that you are today?
Thanks. Yeah. I would say the single biggest reason is always probably like everyone coming to Harvard is have this, silent crying for trying to be the best in a game. So the pain of not being the best in the game is so burning that we want to, keep the actions until we become the best of the game. For situations I cannot be the best of the game, then, stop the game and change it to a new game. So this is why, I was in university in Beijing this 27 years ago. I realized that, there's the game is not for me. So I switched to University of Toronto. And then, I figured out a way to start a business plan competition. That if I cannot be a president of an association, I created my own association. And if I cannot make into, the best investment bank in Canada, I created my own investment bank. So it's about deciding that to be the best in the game. And if the game's it's too tough for us, we just create a new game that we can win in the game.
Now, in preparing for this conversation, I read on your website you had written that running a business is a never ending request of thoughts and decisions and experiments. Now, what do you mean by that? And how has your relationship with decision making changed as you've become more experienced?
Yes, I would say, although we're making choices, making decisions, and have to use our judgment throughout the process, there's always those most important decisions to be made, such as which project or which partner to choose, and which the style we should manage our life, and also what will be the main learning curve we should pick over the next period of time. Should we go with AI or should we go with AI application or with traditional industries? It's always a choice. I would say we're in a lucky spot that almost every company has some capital needs or capital problems or capital crest. So, if they're doing really well, they want to sell, they want to buy companies, they want to deploy. That's one problem. If they're not doing too well, they want to raise money or they need money to grow. So we got a luxury to speak with different versions, different categories, different industries of leaders, and then you know, so we got the chance to make those choices. Yeah.
How do you think about competition for either your business, for any other business? How should entrepreneurs think about competition? Do you spend a lot of time studying competitors in your industry, or do you feel focusing on competitors is a distraction for any leader?
I think competition is definitely good and bad at the same time. We learn from competitors. We learn how other, leading or boutique investment banks, how they do their documents, how they run the process. We try to silently learn from them. Okay. And also it's bad that, especially for merger acquisitions, there is only one winner, everybody lose. Doesn't matter on the buy side or sell side. You only have one buyer for one company. You cannot have two companies buying more than 51%. Similarly, you can only have one advisor winning the mandate or close the mandate. That means all the other people who are trying to get the mandate loses. Okay. So that's unfortunately a sum zero game. And we have to figure out a way to be specialist and to win those mandate. And at some point, investment banking become who can win the best mandate, who makes the money, right? Because eventually the good company will find a buyer. A bad company doesn't matter how good you try. It's not a good place to allocate capital. So this is why we're becoming a builder and investor over the last 4 years. So we still keep investment banking business on the side, but we started to design our own project. We started to manufacture our own opportunities. So in this way, there's no competition. Yeah, because it's so proprietary, it's so unique that there's nobody else is doing this.
I wanted to explore something that you have described, at least on your business website, as the digitalization paradox.
Right.
Yeah. Could you talk a little bit about that, about how business leaders might misunderstand the importance or lack of it of digitalization?
Actually, I would say quite on the opposite. Um, I would argue that almost every outstanding business leaders we have been working with are super passionate about digitalization tools. They either use commercialized one or develop their own proprietary app or their tools, or they engage consultants, AI consultant upgrade their business. I would say these, at least for the circle of CEOs I have been working with, manufacturing, food, services, home care, franchise, at least in the circle I deal with, they are, I would say, quite passionate, quite adaptive to what's we're changing. And I find myself being inspired and learning from them. And doesn't matter they're trying to become, a smart manufacturer or become a multi-stack system operator. I think everybody strive to make a difference. I will not come and say they are underutilized. I will say they have this urgency, they have this anxiety of not using enough. I definitely see that there's still a lot of room to improve, but I definitely dare not underestimate their passion in this.
Great. Looking back on your journey, Richard, are there any lessons from running a business that eventually became life principles for you and guide
Yeah,
you in
so
a decision?
there's so many lessons. My goodness, I would say, do not trust or count on anyone too much. Okay, I'm not saying this in a negative way. I say this in a very very positive way. Try to count and rely on self as much as you can, because if you rely too much, especially as a investor, if you count on anyone too much, there's a tremendous risk involved, because you expect this other CEOs or partners to be resilient, solving the problems, being creative, making the right judgment. You all very often get disappointed. I would say just have normal, even sometimes a little bit lower expectation on other people. Actually, you will be very, very happy man. I think one mistake I made was have too high expectation, have too much faith in other people's performance, and get it disappointed. Yeah. Right now, what I do is have low expectations, but count way more on self performances. And the second lessons I learned is I started building my own business when I was 26. I started my company. Looking back, if I'm talking to my 26 years old self, I would urge myself do not rush to start entrepreneurship, especially in the corporate finance business. It's probably smarter to learn from a industry leader for a couple more years. I think sometime between 35 to 45 would be a great time to start a business, especially in the quote unquote traditional industry. Right? I'm not suggesting other industry, but for corporate finance, for investment, for normal operational business, it's much better to learn more. Yeah, that's the second advice. I won't say mistake; it's a choice. And the third experience would be about looking after your own people in a more sensational way, because sometimes internal people can hurt you the most if you don't look after them properly. That their disappointment. I recently see a quote in which I totally agree. I think it says all the hate comes from missed expectations. If they expect you to treat them certain ways, but we treated them not as they expected, there is a chance that hate being generated from the person you love, you care. So I would say that being more sensational to the people internal is also quite important.
Thank you very much, Richard. That's very helpful. And the fact that you were able to introspect so quickly for this question and share your life principles, at least the top three, it's very, very commendable. And so, at what point did you decide to pursue OPM program? How did you even find out about it? And why did you consider being a part of the OPM program?
Yeah, I would say this is a long preparation and a short-term sprint. So, as a corporate finance student or person, Harvard is really it's a moon, right? It's a pyramid. It's top of the world. It's the most exciting stuff. Okay. So I have been long for the school, long for joining the community. However, life has been busy, and I did go to the one of the best university in Canada, Rotman School, Business School, University of Toronto, great school. I enjoyed it, and started my company, got busy, a lot of clients, kind of keep myself fulfilled, and Toronto has a small community of OPMers. So one of them pushed me so hard to the point that I have to apply. And turned out that's actually one of the best decisions I made. Although it's just a month long, and right now it's less than a year, but I would say this is a decision changing my life that I'm so excited. And I started the meeting with great young entrepreneurs like yourself. I would say this experience is definitely transformative to me.
Incredible. Any takeaways that come to your mind from Unit 1 that are still staying with you? You think about them on a regular basis? Anything you want to share?
There's so much to share, my friend. Yeah, I would say the slogan we always say is make your customer a champion. If you can make your customer a champion, you will win. And also, um, I would say leaders win in a very, very different styles. Even in our living group, you see every person is so different, and you see someone who are laid back, but the next thing you know, she runs $100 million business, and you see a young person, a bit of cocky. Next thing you know, he sold his company for hundreds of millions. And you see someone who don't talk much during the class, but whenever he talks, shows so much wisdom, and you know he's also super young. So this is, I would say, Harvard done a great job to select very diversified, very colorful personalities, but ultra successful leaders into this class.
Incredible. How do you think about the relationship between ambition, family, health, and everything that building a business demands from you?
I believe in focus on one and make the other element to be configured into that one. And that one element could change. You know, I had a parent really sick about 10 years ago. I just have to keep my mother as the center of me making decisions. And right now, you know, I have to make a business or make my ambition to be the center of the universe and make the other pieces being configured to that single center. I think this way people don't get confused. If people have two focuses, they typically feel the pain. If you have just one focus, you know, it's easy to make decisions. I always look up to the great Masa from SoftBank, and you know, I admire him to be so ambitious. He recently said that he feels so shameful he hasn't accomplished much. So imagine the success of SoftBank. Of course, there are failures, and he feel he has done not too much yet. You can imagine the size of his ambition for the next 5 years or 7 years. So I think, especially right now, we're in a technology revolution, globalization revolution, supply chain revolution. I do feel it's very important to be tremendously ambitious. Do not let last year's failures, do not let all the emotions to constrain your imagination. I do feel it's very important to be bold and to be a Robin Hood in this market environment. I wish I'm 10 years younger, but again, look at the people who are 10 years older, I'm still lucky.
What are you optimizing for today that a younger Richard may not have understood?
So I would say there are experiences or there are feelings. You have to go through those challenges and then you can fully understand, or you can understand into the bones. You know, I read the same book or read the same articles 10 years later. You know, I got a level understanding 10 years ago. Right now, I got a different level understanding. And also, I started to appreciate the patterns, the philosophies way more compared to 10 years ago. I would say 10 years ago, I'm more lured to stories. Right now, I'm more lured to philosophies. And it's very important to construct this internal philosophy and logic that they will save you so much time and effort because you can recognize the pattern and quickly understand what's happening, what's our right reaction should be.
What's your process for that? Do you write down your philosophy or your, I think, I don't know how to put it, but your takeaways from your experiences in life, or do you just
There, you
very
know, lot of people saying this. So like Charlie Munger said, you only need to know 25 formulas, right? You know, for us, we have to understand the main, you know, business models. We have to understand the ways of growth, the ways of failure. We need to understand how to build relationships. What's the formulation of creating trust, and what's the formulation of doing marketing? How to build the relationships, and also we need to understand what are distractions, what are noises, what are signals. So it's about running the company, managing the life in a more efficient way, and know how to keep yourself being excited, focus on being excited every day, and do not be dragged into those negative emotions, because negative emotions are the single biggest thief in the world. It's stealing your energy, stealing your future, and stealing your love, your ability to conquer. So whatever you do, figure out a way to stay excited, stay happy, stay satisfied with yourself.
And just to piggyback on that question and your response, what is the definition of a wise man?
What the definition of
A wise man.
wise man? I would say, it's come down to your question earlier. If one person always have quote unquote ambition or goals, but always unable to fulfill it, I don't think he's a wise man. Vice versa, if a person really not believing his own potential, really not, stretching himself enough, then I don't think that's a wise man either. I feel a wise man is about, defining and use whatever intuition, gut feeling, calculation to figure out the right ambition, right goals to achieve, just over a short period of time. I don't think people need to plan for 7 years, 5 years, but people do need to plan for today, for this week, for this month, for probably 3 months, 6 months. That's long enough, and accomplish it, and say something or claim something and actually complete it. I think that will build your credibility within your team, but more importantly, build the credibility within yourself. So I do feel a wise man is about put the proper challenge, put the proper stretch to your body, to your soul, to your business goals, and actually hit them. If you hit all of them, which means you probably not stretch yourself strong enough. If you miss 90% of them, you probably give yourself too hard a goal. So I think a wise man is to understand himself, herself, and accomplish the goals.
Thank you. My last question is, again, as I mentioned at the start, you used to reference a lot of the reading you did when you talk about cases as well. Are there any books or any single book that comes to mind that you find yourself revisiting, that you feel has influenced the way you think?
There are so many. My goodness, that's a tough question. I like to read autobiography books. If you, for example, if you see an Amazon book, you see who the author is, right? So the person who actually matters is just Jeff Bezos. So that's actually a book I would like the most. Actually, it's in my bag right now. It's called Invent and Wonder. Amazon is one of the largest companies in the world. So the CEO must have made a lot right decisions. So the system in his brain is important. So Invent and Wonder, it's not a book written by Jeff Bezos. It's a collection of Jeff Bezos' speeches and his essays, but actually real Jeff Bezos. It's not manipulated by an author or interpreted by a journalist. Okay. The second book is my all-time favorite is Lessons Learned in Pursuit of Excellence by Steve Schwarzman. Because I'm in private equity, I won't say this is a golden Bible, but that's one of the most powerful book you can find. I know he cannot disclose a lot of the secrets, but just the facts, just the stories he disclosed in the book, is extremely humble and very, very inspiring. It just showed that with the right training, right effort, a normal person can accomplish so much. Okay, I'm not saying he's not smart. He's super smart, super talented. But I mean, hey, he's not a superhuman, right? He failed so many times. That gives you a confidence to say, okay, my failure compared to his is it's peanuts. He can sustain that, I can sustain mine, right? So what's the next battle? And the last one I will give is called the Principles. Principles by Ray Dalio. Yeah, those 3 books are my favorite, and each of their own successes, tells the power of the book. So it's Invent and Wonder, Lessons in Pursuit of Excellence, and the Principles.
Phenomenal. Thank you very much, Richard. I know it's late in the night in Boston where you are right now, and you still made the time. So thank you again, and I look forward to seeing you soon.
Thanks, Sophie, and thank you for the questions. See you next time.
Bye.